Beatles on 92 Star. Good evening, this is Dan O'Neill on WYST.
B104.
John Smith is on the line, and I don't care what's on the line, Howard. You have got to say what we know in the booth.
Yes, we have to say it. Remember, this is just a football game, no matter who wins or loses. An unspeakable tragedy confirmed to us by ABC News in New York City. John Lennon, outside of his apartment building on the west side of New York City, the most famous, perhaps, of all of the Beatles, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival. Hard to go back to the game after that news flash, which in duty bound we had to take. Frank?
Indeed it is.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin from NBC News. Former Beatle John Lennon is dead. Lennon died in a hospital shortly after being shot outside his New York apartment tonight. A suspect is in custody but has not been identified. Again, John Lennon is dead tonight of gunshot wounds at the age of 40. We now return to The Tonight Show.
Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and I'm going to be talking about Stained Glass Scarlet's first appearance. Now I know you might be thinking to yourself, Stained Glass Scarlet, one, totally cool name, two, who is she? Okay, Stained Glass Scarlet is a totally awesome character who has made critically few appearances in the Moon Knight comics, and I'm really hoping that she makes a comeback pretty soon with the current run that's out. In the meantime, her first appearance was back in December of 1981 in Moon Knight, Volume 1, issue number 14. So, yeah, we're going to go back. We're going to just read over that issue really quick, all right? You can see, pretty freaking cool cover, all that good stuff, and the insides as well. And what we have inside is the writer, Doug Munch. He is considered the creator of Stained Glass Scarlet. The initial sketches and all that stuff, apparently. Bill Sienkiewicz is the artist here. For some reason, he's not given credit for the creation. I don't know if, like I said, I don't know if Doug Munch had actually done the original sketches for the character also. It's a possibility because it's just such a simple costume, right? So all of this being what it is, Doug Munch is considered the sole creator, apparently. Anyway, on letters, we have Janice Chance. We have Christy Scheel on colors. Denny O'Neill editing. And the editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter. So, we start off in a church in the south side of the Bronx. And there's no real allegory, but there kind of is. Just, you don't realize it necessarily. All of it is allegory. All of it is supposed to mean something else, but you won't realize that until much later on. So, Stained Glass Scarlet she's Scarlet Faciera. She is sitting all alone, drinking some very too bitter wine, and just thinking. Now, you're going to have to check out Stained Glass Scarlet, explained in a minute, to find out more about the character in and of herself. She's actually been retconned from this first issue to be pretty darn cool. But here, she's just a regular person. So she's reminiscing about things, and she actually starts walking around this abandoned church. It's been abandoned for 8 years. She's been here for 3 years, though. And she goes around and she finds this old photo album. She's had plenty of time to make the place her own, keep it clean and all that good stuff. But she mostly just sits and broods. So she walks and she finds her old photo album. She looks at the stars also. she finds this photo album and she's looking over her own history, so to speak. When she was a little girl, as she was growing up, when she was like 8 or so, she thought, I'm either going to be an actress or a nun. And she's like, well, I decided that I was going to actually grow up to be a nun. Now, most of this stuff, mind you, I'm just kind of skipping over some things, or actually kind of blending some things over. Her history comes in 2 different parts in this comic book. The first part, she's just talking about her married life and where things started to really go wrong for her. But much later on in the comic book, towards the end, she's actually telling Moon Knight about all these things. So for now, let's just get this general part of the history out of the way. She is this little girl. She was this little girl, and she thought, I'm going to be an actress or a nun. And she wound up becoming the latter. But after some odd years, she realized that, in fact, the whole time she was actually the former, meaning she became a nun, but she realized she was just acting like a nun. She didn't really want to be a nun. She wanted to be an actress. That's what she really wanted to be. Or at the very least, she just didn't really want to be a nun. It's not what it's not what the cards had in mind for her, not really. So this guy comes in who would eventually become her her husband, all right? He came in and he's like, here, take this gun. I'll even return the money. I got to talk to the father. The father's not here. He's actually away on a thing, a little pilgrimage thing. Let me just talk to you, please. So she does what she can talking to the guy. And I think it's like about 6 months later, they're getting married. So, yeah, it's fine. It's like this pet project of hers actually wound up becoming her husband. Now, unfortunately, he didn't seem to give a whole lot of credence to her, to who she was and all that good stuff. Just didn't really care. It's like, oh, you gave up all this stuff for me. But, he would criticize her and be like, you're no saint. You like to think you're a saint, but you're not. Well, she never really thought she was, and he was ridiculously rude to her and all this stuff. Turns out he actually did love and appreciate her. He just didn't have the equipment. He didn't know he didn't have the tools to express that kind of love for her. So anyway, he went out and he continued robbing banks and doing all sorts of bad stuff. Well, he goes out and robs this one bank, actually winds up killing, or at least shooting the guard in the bank. So on his way out, the cops shoot him dead in front of that very church. The same church. So all this church has a lot of history here. So what do you call it? They kill him there. She's like, oh, they killed him like a dog. Well, he did get finished killing somebody, with all due respect. Sorry. But I do hear police can be like, we're talking way back in the day, and we're about to get into, the whole idea of the civil rights movement and all that stuff that happened in representation of this book. So what happens is this was 15 years after they'd gotten married. So they had a 15-year-old or so son at this particular moment. Okay, so his nickname was Joseph. And he wound up, once he found out his father died in his youth, he's like, I'm going to get revenge on these cops and law and order and all this stuff. Kiddo, you just, did you really not learn all the right lessons? Really? So he wants to be like his dad, and he does. He's such a he's worse than his father was. He's very savage. He goes out there and he just shoots up whomever. They call him Joe Mad Dog Faciera. Yeah. Not a very good, good way to go. And, word has it on the street that he's, he just got out of jail. And, he got captured instead of shot down. He got captured, and word on the streets now is that he's out. He's like, hey, man, I'm going to go out and, apparently my father had a huge stash of money, and I'm going to find where that stash of money is. So the word on the street was that his father's, words to some of his other crooks were, I stored it away where an angel came down from heaven. That's sad. So he actually did love Scarlet. The problem is, again, he just didn't know how to really express it. So the kid apparently didn't really get that. Anyway, so now we're going to go over to Gracie Mansion, and that is the mayor's headquarters in New York City. And that's where Mark Spector, as Stephen Grant, is hanging out with Marlene. And, they're talking, they're hanging out and all this good stuff. And she starts, they're really expressing how artsy she is and how she's trying to teach him to really be a lot more artsy. You know, they're reading Musha, what's full name over here? Alphonse Musha. Maybe it's Mucha. I think it's Musha though. Whatever. Anyway, he's a Czech artist, and he's got compiled works, and they're actually reading his compiled works. So they're sitting down and reading that, and then they go over, and she's going to play some piano. But instead of playing like Mozart and all that stuff, she starts playing, She starts playing the Beatles instead. Yeah, I know, really weird, right? So anyway, several things are said about the Beatles, and then they move on. She gets really frustrated, he gets really frustrated, and they just stop. They can't do anything else. So they turn on the radio instead to kind of, relax. Well, both they and Stained Glass Scarlet hear that Joe Fasciera is out doing his murderous thing. He's going to go back to that church and try and find where his money is, his father's money is, his last score. Anyway, before that even happens, Stained Glass Scarlet goes out by herself in a scarlet robe with white, gloves on. She looks really cool. And she's going to try and find her son. She doesn't. She does at one point, but he ignores her. Anyway, she finds some of the guys like, oh, tell him I'm basically at the church. So the message does get back, and he's like, okay, so she must have found the money. All right, cool. Moon Knight goes out. He beats up all the bad guys. Mad Dog winds up getting away, Stained Glass Scarlet's son, and chases back. They're with Frenchie and the Moon Copter. Oh, God, what a dumb name. Anyway, dumb name aside, they're able to get back to, he goes back to the church. He's able to get back to the church first. And he goes in, he's talking to her, and she sees him as a white knight. And no, not like the term that they use on the internet all the time. Sees him as like literally like he's like an angel. He's like an angel, just came out of the roof of the church, and it's wild. So he's amazing. So she became pretty infatuated with him. That is not necessarily retconned, but expanded upon much later, that she's seriously infatuated with him. She really thinks that he's somebody and something special. Anyway, so when they're having this conversation, this is where she explains a whole lot of the stuff in the past, also the other part, how she used to be a nun and everything. And they get to this part where she gets finished saying, I've never actually found the money that he hid here. I never looked. The past 3 years that I've been here, I never once looked. I never cared. Excuse me, she never came across it while she was cleaning up, I guess, But for the most part, the church has been abandoned, like I said, for 8 years. There's a fake, like how you'll wood panel the front of a door to say it's abandoned and condemned. That's actually a front. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you call it? It's sawed so that the doors will still open and close, even though it looks like the nails are there. So, cute. Anyway, Mad Dog comes walking in, and he points the gun right at his mom. Not even at Moon Knight. He points it at his mom. It's like, all right, Ma, I know you got the money. There's no way you've been here for 3 years and you haven't found the money yet. There's no way you're hiding it from me. I want it now. I'm telling you, you don't know what I'll do. Dude really is nuts. Dude is flat out nuts. And he actually threatens to, he actually threatens to pistol whip her with it. He picks up the gun, turns it around, and he's ready to bring the pummel, it's not a sword, whatever, the grip, there you go, the pistol grip down, and just boom, drop it on her head. Moon Knight throws his truncheon, knocks the gun right out of his hand, and they get into it with each other. They start fighting. He knocks the gun out of Mad Dog's hand. Scarlet picks it up. Or she's got her own gun. Not quite sure exactly how that worked out. Either way, she's got a gun. Well, she's, what the heck's going on? And, what's his face? Mad Dog's on the ground, but he's got a second pistol. He's got a backup pistol in his sock. Hey, if cops can do it, you know what I'm saying? So he pulls it out. He's pointing at Moon Knight. He actually shoots Moon Knight. Gets him right around the kidney, abdomen area, whatever, something to that effect. But he's a tough guy. He could take a single bullet. That was his breakfast this morning. He's just overfed at this point. Anyway, he does get hurt. Scarlet, Stained Glass Scarlet, realizes he really is beyond hope. And rather than seeing the cops gun him down in iniquity, she instead decides to shoot him herself. Kills him. Kills her own son. It's sad. It's really sad. Like, they're actually pointing the guns at each other, and she hesitates just a little bit less, I guess. So, shoots him like dead in the heart. He dies. He's reaching for something to hold on to maintain his balance, and he comes across the rope to the bell. He grabs it, obviously pulls, and the bell starts to ring. Inside of the bell is actually where the money was hidden. So it falls right next to him. The money and he fall at the exact same time. Oh, we're talking about some really sad stuff here. Really sad stuff. So anyway, she drops the gun and she just walks off, and he lets her go. She returns back to he returns back to Marlene, and, he's hurt and she's going to bandage him up, whatever. But on the other end, she leaves off and she goes into into the street light and disappears. We will see a few, very scarce few extra appearances of her where she eventually develops the psychic rapport. Again, Scarlet, Stained Glass Scarlet, explained in a minute. It's in the description and just all that good stuff. Anyway, so yeah. Here's the very interesting part about this. Doug Munch wrote this exactly 1 year after the assassination of John Lennon. So this is actually a commentary on gun control. So, yeah, there's been social issues. I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to read about political social issues. Stop. You've been reading about them. If you've ever read a comic book before, Marvel or DC, you have read about them. They exist. So, that being the case, this was a political commentary on gun control and how sad it was that this is the 1 year anniversary of John Lennon's death. It was a genuinely heartbreaking thing. And before anybody asks, and before your fingers start typing up, who shot John Lennon, I want you to stop and think about this. The person who shot John Lennon is this. He is a guy who decided to shoot John Lennon, not because he disagreed with his political, beliefs, because he believed in a form of communism, not, red communism. No, he believed in a form of communism where people actually help. Just listen to the song Imagine if you want to know exactly who John Lennon was and what his beliefs were. He believed that, there should be peace and equality with everyone. Nobody should be disenfranchised. Nobody should have their rights taken away or never even given to them in the first place, that we are all equal. And boom, that's really it. Like, that's the gist of his beliefs for the most part. And he wasn't killed because of that. He was instead killed simply because he was famous, and this guy who killed him, yes, I know his name. I remember his name again because I had to look him up and all that stuff and figure out, just make sure I was right about all this stuff. But more specifically, he was killed because he was famous. This guy who shot him, who assassinated John Lennon, decided, you know what? If I'm the guy who kills John Lennon, I will be famous. So, before you decide to go and look up his name and have it indelibly sketched in your mind and maybe say it to other people and for trivia purposes and things like that, I want you to think. He wanted to assassinate John Lennon and he succeeded. He wanted to do it for the sake of being popular, for being famous. Don't give him that. Don't give that to any single person who ever commits an act of violence with or without a gun, with or without murder. Never give those people that opportunity. Never, ever. So this way, it sends a whether they live or die afterwards. Never let them have the satisfaction that it happened, and send a message to anyone else who would think, I'm going to do this in order to get popular, in order to get famous. Let this be a deterrent to them, that these people are forgotten and that their names are scratched out on the annals of history. The guy should have even lost his citizenship and just done. Like, he is nobody. He is nobody. That's how I feel about these kinds of people. That being said, I hope that you genuinely enjoyed this comic book. I hope that you are interested in looking up more about Stained Glass Scarlet, and I'm really hoping that she does appear again, maybe in Max Bemis's run, which is currently going on now. We'll see what happens. All right, guys. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.